welcome to another brand new episode of Dingers and Stingers, the podcast that tried to tell you about Team Korea. We tried. 11-4, their first dub in the pool play of the WBC 2026. Look, it's underway. We're going to talk a little bit about early action to start our show, but later on today's show, we have our division preview for the NL Central. So the latest in our division preview series leading up to the start of regular season baseball. If you missed our episodes on the NL East or the AL East, go back and check those out. We have those out already, and the rest of the divisions are coming up. And so today we start with the NL Central, start again with the NL Central. I'm Dallas, that's Drew, and that's Matt. And that's what we're doing on today's show, pretty much. We're division previewing, and we're going to talk about a couple things, though, up top, a couple things that commanded some headlines this week. The biggest thing is something that I didn't even believe it when I was laying my eyes on it, because it's, one, such a bummer, and two, how do you do that? How is this possible? By now you know that Jurickson Profar has been suspended once again for testing positive for a banned substance, performance-enhancing drugs. If you think this sounds familiar, well, we talked about it around this time last year because it happened at that point. And so, as crazy as it is to go back to back on something like this, the question that came to my mind first when I heard about it is this the end of the road for Profar? Like, is this the end of teams taking, big investment chances on him, do you guys think?
Yeah, he's already like, he's already not really necessarily a candidate for another big contract or anything. And now this definitely cements that. He has another year left on his Braves contract after this one.
Mhm.
In total, he'll by that point have played whatever he played at the end of last season. Um, yeah, I don't know, like if he's gonna play for the Braves again because they I know they have him for another year, but like, are they done with him? Are they just gonna cut him after this season, whatever happens? Because they don't have to pay him this year. That is how that works. But um, yeah, it's a terrible look in this day and age to be suspended once. Okay, maybe you could convince me some kind of reason why that might have happened. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe you were just trying something new and it was irresponsible, whatever. But to get banged back to back years like that, that's just that's just totally on you. That's like anytime since the crackdown started like 20 years ago, um, the number of people who get caught more than once are forever jokes to baseball fans. So, there's just no chance you're going to come back from that. And what's sad is like these are back to back after he started having his best years. So like I don't know, like not to, it throws
Hey,
everything under
hey,
suspicion.
hey.
But I'm not even saying he did anything before. Like I'm not like they do testing, so it's like, he clearly got away with it if there was anything. So I'm not even saying that, but it's like why start now, dude? You were getting it together. And then once you get caught once, why on earth are you doing it again? Like it's selfish and it's stupid and we'll talk about this in a second, but it puts the Braves in a bind.
Listen, 2024 Jerks and Profar may be the greatest player to exist in my lifetime, and I genuinely am so happy that it happened. And my undiagnosed cheater doesn't count because he didn't get caught. And yeah, you can place your suspicions on him, whatever. That's my goat right there. 2024 was a great year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he had a great year in 2024. And then last year, there are those baseball fans who just stopped giving him the benefit of the doubt after getting suspended last year. And then there was those, I fall into this camp, which was like, well, he probably wasn't during his best year. He probably just wanted to make sure he was doing some stuff. Maybe he could continue to have good years. He got a little insecure or whatever. Um, but this now, I'm just like, yeah. maybe he was in 2024. Like I don't know. Like who knows? And so like he's just done. And so yeah, it's a bummer. Because of how fun he was in 2024, and that we're probably not going to get to see him be that fun again. And so let's talk about it. How does this impact the outlook for the Braves? I mean, we just talked about them in our NL East division preview. So another big change here for one of the teams we've already discussed. But yeah, how does this impact the Braves' outlook for this year?
Yeah, it's definitely negative. I mean, I think they were expecting him to DH for them, play some left field. Like they are a team that, while I think the major league roster is solid, it doesn't have a lot of depth. So losing a guy that was supposed to be in your starting lineup day in and day out is bad to begin with. And I'm looking at like who's going to replace him. Like, yeah, they have two catchers, so they, can maybe mix and match there. But Sean Murphy's hurt, so it's like Jonah Heim and Drake Baldwin holding that down. I don't know if you're going to want to put one of them at DH. Like maybe if you want to get Drake Baldwin off his legs a couple times a week or whatever. Um, Other than that, it's like what Dominic Smith, who, let's
Hmm.
face it, at this point in his career, like he's not who you want clogging up the DH spot. Jorge Mateo, like speedster guy, not really your DH. Like they're just not very many options on this roster as it's currently constructed. Not to mention the Braves have had some pitching injuries in camp already. Like this is a team that for the last couple of years seems to be built up on, you know, a structure made out of popsicle sticks, and little by little the sticks are starting to come apart here. Um, there's still reason to believe in this team. It's not like Dirksen Profar was supposed to be like, you know, their best player and their number one run producer or anything like that, but he was expected to be a contributing member of this team, and they won't have that. And just add it to the list of things that have gone wrong in the last couple of years for the Braves.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely leaves a hole. Like he at his, 2024 peak was above average defender and a really good bat. And I think that's what they were hoping to slot in. And like Drew said, I mean, this is a team that already feels like so fragile and has experienced this the last couple of seasons where health has not been on their side. And for, this kind of gets lumped into that category as well of like, this is a like health related suspension, if you will. And it just tests the depth of the team that they really don't have. And, this will be the first full year back for Acuna following it was what ACL or something. His injury. Um, but even last year, like they definitely had to keep him kind of not under wraps, but they limited what he was able to do, and so we'll see if he's able to be at full strength. Um, their outfield is dangerously thin at this point. I mean, it already was one of the thinner position groups for them, and with this, it's just that much more emphasized.
Yeah. Yeah, no question. It doesn't do anything good for them. And so I think that it's just one of those things that, like you say, for the Braves, who have had a couple years worth of just awful luck, trying to make good decisions and then having it blow up in your face like that. It's tough, but we'll see how they bounce back and how they move forward. So next up in our little, to intro the show, start our topics here. Let's talk about World Baseball Classic. So pool play just started as we record this. It started yesterday as we record this. So there's a game going on right now, or there will be soon. But USA and some of the big dogs, they don't play till the weekend. What I wanted to talk about just a little quick is if anything stood out to you guys from these cool little exhibitions that happened over the course of the week. Some of these World Baseball Classic teams were at spring training and kind of, went up against some of the, major league squads. And so, yeah, anything interesting pop out to you from watching or following those? I know that Team USA kind of beat up on the Giants a little bit. There was a situation where I forget which team it was, maybe USA too, but it was like at one point in the game was all Rockies versus all Rockies, like because they were playing against Colorado, and eventually all the players that were playing for for the team, whoever it was, were Rockies. So cool stuff like that. Anything stick out to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, from that Giants USA game, I didn't watch a ton of the action throughout the day. I was working. But
Mhm.
I did catch Roman Anthony hit an absolute tank, which is fun to see always, but fun to see him in that Team USA lineup hitting a bomb like that because it's like, you know, gets a little bit of extra exposure in those kind of moments when he's in a lineup with, all the best hitters from the United States, which is essentially most of the best hitters on earth, and he's the one going yard like that. It's cool. I did also catch Kevin McGonigal, the top prospect for the Tigers, hit a leadoff home run against the Dominican. Granted, I mean it's Luis Severino. It's not like he's an all-world pitcher, but like that game was in the Dominican, so that was cool to see. Um, but other than that, yeah, I didn't really catch a ton of this action, but it's always a cool thing. Like I would love to make it out to spring training when they are doing this and like catch one of these games. I think that'd be a ton of fun. But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, the thing I love seeing is I talked about them briefly last week, but I kind of called out. I thought Team Australia had some fun players on it, and they came out and the very first game, like pretty badly upset one of the better teams as far as like how they were ranked coming into this. And they beat Chinese Taipei, um, which was an upset. And Travis
Bazana.
Bazana, yeah, something like that. Uh, he hit his bomb, and he's another guy like you're saying. He's just like one of those like top prospects, and drafted by the Guardians, I believe. And I think he'll be playing this year, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's up in the big leagues
Most
now.
likely. I don't know
Yeah.
if he'll start the year,
Um,
but like he'll get some time.
yeah. And so it, like you're saying, it's cool seeing like young up and coming guys kind of making a mark on an international stage. But then also like it's cool seeing a team like Australia and like the WBC like Team Australia Twitter world has been so fun to interact with. Like they've got a good thing going in Australian baseball. They seem fun. So it was cool.
Yeah, it's great to see all the different fan bases get loud and get rallied around and get ready for the meat of the tournament, which has started and will continue. So yeah, it was just cool to get everybody in uniform, get everybody out there for the first time, see everybody. It's going to be a great couple weeks of just enjoying all this great tournament has for us. But we are going to enjoy right now is our division preview of the NL Central. It is why we are here today on this episode, is to give you the scoop on the NL Central. So let us tarry no further. We're going to start with where we've been, as we always do, and recap briefly the 2025 season standings for this division. So first place, Milwaukee Brewers, 97 wins, 25 losses. They would go on to lose to the Dodgers in the NLCS. The Chicago Cubs finished second place, 92 wins, 70 losses. Or that's not right. I put 70. That's not right.
That's right.
Oh, is it?
I think 25 was wrong or
25
whatever
is
you.
wrong. Well, I was like,
Yeah.
one of those numbers is wrong. Okay, so the Brewers, who knows how many games they lost, but they won 97 of them. The Chicago
At
Cubs
least
won.
25.
They won it. They lost at least 25, maybe. Who knows? Um, dang. Yeah, I looked at. That was the first time I looked at that, and I was like, one of those numbers is so wrong. Okay, Chicago Cubs. They did finish second. And they did lose 70 games, but they won 92, which is awesome. They also made the postseason and lost to the Brewers in the divisional series round. All right, and then third place, Cincinnati Reds. I'm pretty sure were 83 and 79. They lost to the Dodgers in the wild card round. And then finishing out this division in fourth place, St. Louis Cardinals, 78 and 84, and the Pirates in last place, 71 and 91. So that's how it finished out last year. So let's talk about now where we're going. So we are going to break this down team by team, give you a recap of their offseason, talk about the moves they made and the impact they might have, and then at the end of it all, we will give you some predictions for how this division will end up this coming season. So let's start, as we always do, in finishing order. So we are going to start with Milwaukee. All right, so they were unceremoniously swept by the Dodgers in the NLCS, which may have made people forget about the fact that for long stretches of the season, the Brewers looked like the best team in baseball in 2025. They went on two 11-plus game win streaks, including a 14-game win streak in the latter part of the season, blowing the minds of many around the game who may not have been sure what to make of the squad coming into the season. At the end of the day, this is a small market team, so let's see if they behaved like one this offseason. So, offseason recap for the Brewers. Drew, take us through their moves and maybe the people they lost to.
Yeah, Brewers, as always, a busy offseason, and it's mostly from the trade department, as it so frequently is. They made some decently big trades for a team that was had the best regular season record in baseball last year. They traded away Isaac Collins to the Royals. They got back relief pitcher Angel Zerpa in that move. They traded away, this was the big one, Freddie Peralta, their ace starting pitcher with 1 year left on his contract. Um, they traded him to the Mets. They got back a decent haul in utility player infielder Jet Williams and starting pitcher Brandon Sproat, who I think they expect big things from. They traded away Caleb Durbin to the Boston Red Sox. They got back Kyle Harrison, starting pitcher. They got back another starting pitcher in Shane Drohan. He might end up profiling more as a bullpen arm for them. And then infielder David Hamilton, who comes full circle because he was drafted by the Brewers and traded to the Red Sox a few years ago. And they were also able to keep Brandon Woodruff around as he accepted the qualifying offer. They lost some other guys beyond the ones I named in those trades. Catcher Danny Jansen signed elsewhere, Rhys Hoskins signed elsewhere, Jose Quintana signed elsewhere, and Shelby Miller as well. So it's going to be a new look from the Brewers this year.
Yep, no doubt. So look, Brewers had pretty much an expected offseason for them. If you are one to sort of question the machine here, how it works, one day you'll learn, I think, as we all do, that as long as it's this group of people calling the shots, the off seasons are going to look pretty similar. But that doesn't mean that they can't be impactful, even though they look the same. So let's talk about which addition do you think makes the biggest impact for this team in a positive way for 2026?
Yeah, for 2026, that's an interesting question because in typical Brewers fashion, they didn't really trade for anyone that you're like, oh yeah, that guy, you slot him into their starting rotation, you slot him into their lineup, and they're just going to roll. But somebody will, right? Because that is also how it works. I think Brandon Sproat is going to be a good pitcher for them long term. We'll see how much that impact happens in 2026. And from what I'm hearing, I think Kyle Harrison might be the guy for them. They are one of those organizations that is notorious for finding diamonds in the rough. Kyle Harrison is a former top prospect who the shine has worn off of from now two different organizations. And the early reports from spring is that the Brewers quickly taught him a new pitch that has him looking nasty. So we'll see, how that plays out. I think the pressure won't be as high there. Obviously, I think it's not a good thing if your team trades away your ace starting pitcher, but I do trust the Brewers more than almost any other organization in terms of filling that void with other guys. So I think Kyle Harrison could end up being a really big piece for them this year.
Yeah, and I'd even bump on that. Like, I think being able to hold on to Brandon Woodruff still. I mean, we've seen at his peak, Brandon Woodruff is an amazing pitcher, and he's going to be 1 year healthier. And I could definitely see him slotting in as that top guy in the rotation. And barring health, like he should be really good. And especially like you said, the Brewers are just a team that you don't bet against. Like it doesn't matter what they look like. They're probably going to be one of the most competitive teams, and they'll be right in the mix at the end of the season. So you can't really ever count them out. But I agree. I mean, they kind of just reset their timetable, which they seem to do every few years, and they've got all these new prospects. And I know like the guys they got from the Mets were both pretty highly touted prospects for the Mets. And so, those guys I'm sure we're going to see are either going to be trade pieces in a few years now and we'll get something else in return, or they might be staple kind of guys that we watch win 90 games a year. It's just, it feels almost inevitable.
Yeah, yeah, no question. This front office knows how to do its own business, and it works out for them, and so it works out in ways that you're hearing it start to maybe work out already. Like Drew is saying, like it works out in ways where they develop people and they have good people in their building who know how to get the best out of certain players and who have certain skill sets, and also they seem to just know how to teach certain things to people whoever comes in, they almost always leave learning something, having learned something new, having a new thing in their bag, whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
when you have that kind of infrastructure in place, you can make moves like this, like the ones they made this offseason, because you are counting on that infrastructure to sort of, work its magic. And I think that is where the Brewers find themselves right now. So, let's talk about um, Freddie Peralta a little bit. So when you contribute as much to a team as he has for this team, and then they trade him away, um, you know, what does that do, if anything, do we think for the players and what they expect the organization expects of them, this coming year? Does it does that have any effect here?
You know, pretty much any other team, I would say yes, it has an effect. Um, I also want to, Freddie Peralta is the big name, but I want to throw in Caleb Durbin and Isaac Collins as well. These guys finished third and fourth place in National League Rookie of the Year voting last year. So they have years of control left. They were solid contributors for a Brewers team that, again, won the most games in the regular season last year. Um, and so now three of their best players from a season ago are not on the team, and yet I still have complete faith in this Brewers organization. We bunch them in the same boat as like the Rays and the Guardians, these teams that like don't spend money. They trade their players when they start to get expensive, and yet even amongst that group, I trust the Brewers the most. They've been a playoff stalwart for the last like basically decade almost at this point. I think they've missed the playoffs once in the last 8 seasons, something like that. Whereas we've seen the Rays and the Guardians go through their ups and downs. Um, yeah, I think like it feels sketchy not to have Freddie Peralta in this rotation anymore. It really does. You look at it, there's still guys like Matt said. Brandon Woodruff's still a very solid pitcher. He's coming back, hopefully like just a full blown healthy season for him. But he's 33 years old. He's on a 1 year deal, so like that's not a long term piece. You've got Jacob Mizorowski, who's like one of the most electric arms in baseball. I'm excited to see what another year from him looks like. But he also had his ups and downs as, a volatile young arm. You've got Quinn Priester in there who had a solid year for them. You've got Kyle Harrison, who I already talked about. You're just going to get guys that on other teams like wouldn't really make too much noise, and they're going to end up being good for the
Yeah.
Brewers. So I totally expect them to be good. Jackson Churio, I think he's still only 22. I expect him to just keep getting better and better. Bryce Terang, he's going to be playing with Team USA in the WBC. He's one of the best underrated players in the game. William Contreras, one of the best catchers in the game. Andrew Vaughn gets traded over there as kind of like a throwaway trade and ends up being one of their very best hitters. I wouldn't be shocked, Dallas, to see Luis Rengifo have a resurgent year this year because that's just how the Brewers operate. So
Hmm?
I have complete faith in them. You know the bullpen's going to be nasty. Um, yeah, well, I'll kind of not reveal exactly where I think they end up until we talk about the standings later, but I'm not going to sweat the Brewers. I'm not going to be nitpicking all their different deals here.
Yeah, I mean, you said exactly what I wanted to say at the top. It's like if this was almost any other team, absolutely, I think faith would be shaken. If it was like any other team, but the fact that it's the Brewers, it was almost like expected and predictable, and we know what the results have been when they've done this before. And so I think just like Drew said, like I'm not likely to bet against the Brewers being a good team this year. Um, they just they know how to make nobodies into somebodies. I mean, I don't think people talk enough about the turnaround Andrew Vaughn had. Like the league's worst valued player before that trade, and after like a month straight of being one of the best hitters in baseball, finally reached zero WAR. But like he turned into one of the better hitters in baseball in that second half of the season. And I mean, he literally was the least valuable player in all of baseball by WAR. And so it's just like they just know something about how to get something out of these players. It doesn't matter what you've been before. If you're in the Brewers, they're going to get the best of what you have.
Yep, that is the way we've come to know, at least. And, Brewers fans know better than anyone that, you know, there's not much of anything that could force this front office to change its ways, spend big in free agency and do acquisitions that way. Everyone else would do well to have that same mindset, right? Like, if it works, it works. And, we don't expect anything crazy. And if they surprise us, they surprise us. But, you know, they have that dominant regular season. They got pretty easily swept by the Dodgers right at the doorstep of their first World Series appearance in decades. And, this is the way they've chosen to go. This is their way, and they've stuck to it. So there's a lot to like about this team and this division, outside of the very top of it, could get muddy quick. And so, when you think about playing games against some of these teams in the division, you can see the Brewers having a lot of success because of the way that they move. So let's talk about the other team that could, find themselves in a similar place as they were last year. Last year, finishing second place, the Chicago Cubs. So the Cubs, they were the favorite to unseat the Brewers atop this division in 2025. If any team in this division was going to do it, it was going to be them. And so, if not for historic win streaks by the Brewers, multiple that they had, the Cubs very well might have done that. And so they took a major jump in 2025 into serious contention, skating by the Padres in the wild card round, and then taking the NL Central Division champions, Brewers, to the brink in the division series. They came up just short in Game 5 there, though. So major questions loomed for the Cubs in the offseason, how they would capitalize and continue the story that they're writing right now. And so let's take a look at how some of those questions were answered. So offseason recap for the Cubs. Matt, let us know about some of these moves.
Yeah, so as far as the guys that they lost, obviously the big name that everyone talked about all offseason, ourselves included, is Kyle Tucker. He was brought over in that trade, and they opted to let him walk. I mean, they're I don't remember if there is really that much of a competitive offer even on the table really for him. But they let him walk and he is gone. And then it's a lot of pitchers and kind of, back end guys. We got Brad Keller, we got Michael Soraka, Drew Pomeranz, Nate Pearson, and then kind of just utility infielder guy, Willie Castro. As far as the like big departures go. But then as far as who's new, they kind of replaced one Astro with another, and they got Drew's boy Alex Bregman. They traded for Edward Cabrera from the Marlins, and then they brought in like all of the relief pitchers apparently: Phil Maton, Hobie Milner, Caleb Thielbar, Jacob Webb, Hunter Harvey, and then a first baseman Tyler Austin. They keep Shota Imanaga around. Um, So honestly, a pretty busy offseason for the Cubs, like all things considered. And I think, they swapped one kind of captain like player for another, and then they said good riddance to that bullpen and decided to go another route with that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely an overhaul on the back end of their bullpen and through the bullpen as a whole. And then, yeah, so let's start with the big one, right? So I was actually with Drew in person when Alex Bregman signed with the Cubs. And it was pretty, I mean, I was pretty surprised, to be honest. I didn't see that, um, I don't necessarily think I saw that materializing, but um, when we talk about you know, Kyle Tucker, you maybe don't want to extend an offer to, or you try and it just doesn't come close to what other teams are willing to give or whatever. The pivot to Alex Bregman, is it a worthy pivot? Like, do you think that that's sort of, do you think they're players that, can fill similar, they don't play the same position, but can fill similar-ish impact to a team like the Cubs?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so much about them that's intertwined, yet they're very different from each other. They were in the same draft class, both picked by the Astros within the top five picks, kind of a rare random thing that can happen. Um, and yeah, like we've both seen them play to MVP candidate levels. Um, and that's kind of where the similarities end. Like they played on the Astros and they've both been good. But like Alex Bregman's an infielder, Kyle Tucker's an outfielder. Alex Bregman is one of the probably players in the league that gets the most amount of praise for his like leadership qualities and that that energy and that like kind of what you would want from a captain. And I think Kyle Tucker, fair or unfair, has kind of gotten a reputation of someone who he just like he's good, but he's just like fine being there. He's not like necessarily the big team guy. He's not the big leader guy. Um, so I don't know. Like I think Kyle Tucker at this point in their careers is the better player and the better bet, and it's why he made more than Alex Bregman did in less like overall more money in fewer years than Alex Bregman got. Like um, so kind of a crazy contract. Um, but for the Cubs, I think it's a perfectly worthy, pivot. Alex Bregman, he's gonna be so good for this young core, like Pete Crow Armstrong. You've got Matt Shaw, who came up and had a decent year. You've got Michael Bush over there. I think Bregman is a good complement to these guys. At the same time, it is a little funny to me that they didn't even try to really keep Kyle Tucker as far as it seemed, and you know, they spent big to get Alex Bregman. Whether you want to like bring other teams into the mix or not about who should have or shouldn't have paid him, they paid big for him. He got a big contract. Um, I do worry a little bit about him, and I swear, this is not sour grapes. Playing at Wrigley Field, where the wind blows in, it's kind of tough for right-handed hitters. He is not the most powerful bat to begin with. That's not really his game, and he's older than, he's on the wrong side of 30. We'll see exactly how that ages, but as far as a fit for this year, I think it's a totally worthy pivot, and I think they're going to be happy to have him.
Yeah, and I think the being over 30 bit is a fair concern, but at the same time, this is such a young team that kind of surrounds him. There's a lot of young players on this lineup, and yeah, I just think like as you're saying, I don't know the ins and outs of like who's talked about as like great leader or not, but if Kyle Tucker isn't seen as that guy and Alex Bregman is seen as someone who can help develop this young core of players, like it's a great move in my opinion. Like sometimes the value isn't purely in the bat, right? And they have Seiya Suzuki and uh I forget it was either this what I'm about to say or it was the exact opposite of what I'm about to say. But I remember his splits were like very polarizing between when he was playing in right field versus when he was DHing. And his hitting stats took like a pretty significant dip. I want to say his hitting stats are up when he was regularly playing in right field versus when they were playing him just as a DH. And so I wonder, are they like, hey, we already have another good bat who can play right field. Might as well bring in this leader and this guy to play in the infield and shore that up. Because now, I mean, they're going to have Bregman and Dansby Swanson, and that's like a really solid, left side of the field. So I personally like the move. I think it's good. And, Kyle Tucker was offered the bag from a team that not many can compete with. So if you're talking about consolation prizes, if you even want to call Bregman that, it's like about as good as it gets.
Yeah. Yep, I think so. And I think, for them, veteran leadership is what they need. And he is going to, hop in there and be able to really uh, bring that dugout to a place where they maybe will start feeling like they start playing beyond their years a little bit. Like you might see that start, around the middle of the season or late in the season. And I think that's when the Cubs want to have that kind of impact be made is in the long term, right? They're not thinking about, um, you know, being a team that makes some noise. They're thinking about being a team that goes all the way. And so when you have that in mind, you need to bring in a guy like that when you have so many young players who can, help them realize what it's like to go there and who has been there a lot himself. So that's the idea, and that's what you get with Bregman, which I think is it's going to be a great asset for the Cubs. But you know, the Cubs offseason here, it puts them in a strong position to continue that story that they started last season. I think, if the lineup remains intact and the bullpen gambles pay off, the Cubs could once again find themselves making a run in the postseason. And I think that, we'll see how some of these the bullpen overhaul works out. But I think they have the right idea here, and we'll see how it plays out for them. Next team up is going to be the Cincinnati Reds. They finished third, so they are third in our order. So one of the teams that took a more surprising jump in 2025 was the Reds, sneaking into the postseason against the odds and finding themselves going toe-to-toe with the biggest powerhouse in the sport in the wild card round. So the Dodgers did make quick work of the Reds. However, it's a reminder that this roster was not quite yet ready for the brightest lights. So after an offseason full of moves, will this year's roster be ready? So let's talk about what they did in the offseason. Drew, hit us with the offseason recap for the Reds.
Yeah, so they lost a few guys that were decently important to them, even if they're not necessarily household names. Miguel Andujar is over in San Diego now. Nick Martinez is in Tampa Bay, as is Gavin Lux. In that trade, Zach Littell is gone, Scott Barlow's gone, Austin Hayes, and Santiago Espinal, who sounds like he's going to make the Dodgers opening day roster. Good for him.
Wow.
But they did make some moves, even if it's all these teams are kind of staying on brand, like nothing super splashy. One name that's kind of exciting. So the name that I think is the most exciting is Eugenio Suarez is back. It's only a 1 year, $15 million deal, so it kind of goes to show that he wasn't necessarily being valued around the league, but he was great on the Reds in the past. He's a huge, home run bat, and that's about it from him at this point. But he's going to DH, so if he can go up there and pop close to 50 home runs, great. They also got JJ Bleday over from the A's. They have Dane Myers, Caleb Ferguson, Pierce Johnson, and Brock Burke. So kind of a rebuilt bullpen with Emilio Pagan coming back as well on the back end.
Yep. Oh yeah. So, the Reds add that power, right? So let's start there. They add that power that they needed. They were, near the bottom of the majors in home runs last year. It's something that this offense really craved and really needed was someone who can reliably get in there and drive the ball. And so you bring in a guy like Eugenio Suarez. So let's talk about the impact he might have on this lineup and where he slots in and what how he can elevate it.
Yeah, according to Roster Resource, he's going to be hitting fourth for them, which makes sense to me. I mean, like I said, he's going to be like all power. What concerns me about this lineup is the amount of strikeouts they're going to have. Eugenio Suarez is one of the top strikeout guys in the league. And he's batting right behind Ellie De La Cruz, who is also one of the top strikeout guys in the league. You've got Tyler Stevenson catching, who is one of the top strikeout guys in the league in terms of percentages. Matt McLean, they're all in the high 20s in for Suarez, into the 30s in their projections on their percentage of strikeouts. So this is definitely going to be a boom or bust kind of lineup. They're going to strike out plenty. They play in a hitter-friendly park, so you would think the home runs would be plentiful. Um, but yeah, it's kind of an interesting lineup where you can talk yourself into it being really exciting, but you kind of have to squint and you have to hope for some best-case scenarios to come through here. I love Ellie De La Cruz. He's one of the most exciting young players in baseball. He's not 25 yet. He steals bases, he hits home runs, but until he really cuts down on those strikeouts, I think it's going to prevent him from being like one of the true superstars in this league. And the lineup is kind of built around him taking a big step forward. He's really the focal point of this lineup for the Reds, and I don't know. They just need a lot of things to click. And we'll talk about the rotation in a second. I think that's a different story. But yeah, the lineup is it's a little sketchy for me.
Well, I can't lie here. Count me as one of those people who's squinting and sees it, because I love the addition of Eugenio Suarez. Like, I think that they were missing a true power bat. It felt like they did have a lot of these, like, again, like, you look at, like, the Gavin Lux profile, and it's a lot of, like, trying to maximize hitters in a hitter-friendly park. But why not just get the dude who mashes? And yes, they're going to strike out a lot, but at the same time, when you have power, it can almost make up for a lot of things. And I think that I've seen plenty of teams who get on base a ton and then hit the most back-breaking, double play balls every single inning. It felt like that was the top of the Padres lineup for the last 2 years with Arias, Tatis, and Machado. It's like at some point you need a guy who just kind of crushes balls, and I like it. I like it. I'm excited to see this Reds lineup. For all the reasons you pointed out, they definitely come with some risk, but at the same time, I can see the vision and I like it. I think it's fun.
Yeah, it can be one of those things, right, where it's like, yes, the opportunities that you have are fewer, you're striking out more, but are you capitalizing on the ones that you get? That's what the Reds are trying to improve on here, it feels like to me. And so pivoting now to the rotation, I mean, we lost the Reds here. They've lost some really strong players in their rotation. So what is the outlook for that group this year, and how maybe will those losses impact the way that the Red season plays out?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest news is recent news, and that is that Hunter Green is having some elbow discomfort and is going in for an
Hmm.
MRI. As far as I know, we do not have an update on that. But that could be catastrophic for them because this team, like they're kind of built around Ellie on offense, definitely built around Hunter Green being an A starting pitcher, which we've seen him be. So I don't think that was a bad plan. Of course, pitcher injuries happen. Um, we'll just have to play the wait and see game and see exactly how significant this injury is. But if they don't have him, they certainly still have a solid bunch of starting pitchers. I just don't think the ceiling is nearly as high as if they do have Hunter Green. So they have Andrew Abbott, who's been really solid the last few years. Although from what like the stat heads think, it's like despite some really poor underlying metrics. So we'll see, about that. I like Brady Singer. I think that's a trade that has worked out really well for the Reds, getting rid of Jonathan India. Nick Lodolo is one of those guys who's just kind of straight up nasty. And then a guy I'm really excited to see more of is Chase Burns.
Hmm.
He was a top draft pick. I don't remember exactly where he was picked, and then made his debut last year with some mixed results. Kind of a young kid trying to figure it out, but he just throws gas, and I think he's going to be a really exciting player in this league. So I'm really excited to see what he brings. He should have an opportunity whether or not Hunter Green is healthy. And if Hunter Green is healthy, then this could be one of the nastier rotations in baseball. At the same time, it's not a ton of guys that you have seen like the history of a workload and all that that you can just like fully count on. But I feel better about their starting rotation than I do about their lineup, and that is even with the Hunter Green injury.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what we've seen from these guys, as they've kind of started their young careers in the majors, is they similarly are kind of a boomer bust pitching staff. Like these are guys who can go 7 or 8 innings deep and punch out 10 dudes, and I've also seen them get absolutely lit up, every single one of them. And so it's this interesting dynamic where it's like it is going to be a weird like does the pitching staff boom when the lineup booms, or is it going to be where one gives up too much and it creates inconsistency? I think that's the dangerous part is when both the lineup and the pitching staff are this kind of like high risk, high reward play style. You kind of need it to really like mirror each other and line up for you to actually win a lot of games. So that should be interesting. That's a bummer to hear about Hunter Green. I hadn't heard about that because he had an awesome year last year, and it felt like he was finally like becoming who we all thought he was.
Yeah, I just want to point out something interesting that I'm sure like other people know, but I'm just realizing for the first time as I'm looking at their roster on Fangraphs. Their starting pitching rotation, they have four guys: Nick Lodolo, Chase Burns, Rhett Lauder, and then also if you include Hunter Green. Two of those guys were second overall picks in the draft, and then two of those guys were seventh overall picks in the draft. So combined, there are there are four guys who were, all, if you want to average that out, 3.5 picks into the draft. So you would think the ceiling is there. Brady Singer was also a first round pick, and then Andrew Abbott was a second round pick. So like this is a rotation that was like created years ago to for us to see right now. Um, and it's just a matter of can they put it all together? Because I think the vision is has been there for a while.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those seasons where, the front office kind of holds their breath a little bit. It's like, did what we did work out? Is it going to be
Yeah.
okay, after all this time? So, you know, uh, talk about how this team strikes out a lot. They struck out at the beginning of the offseason. They took a big swing at Kyle Schwarber. He did not sign with them. And so they had to try and improve their roster through smaller name and smaller money transactions. This is a roster that was, sort of leagues behind the top of the National League when they made the postseason last year. So the improvements that they made can only lead to so much optimism. But Reds fans can look forward to more power this year, and maybe that'll be just what the team needs to jumpstart itself. So speaking of a team jumpstarting itself, let's talk about a team that's doing the opposite of that and on purpose. So St. Louis Cardinals are up next. They finished fourth in this division last year. So 2025, the latest in a trend of mediocrity for the Cardinals. They have been careening toward a full rebuild for some time now. They failed to reach 500 and missed the postseason for the third straight season, something that this fan base is not very used to much anymore. The offseason was in the hands of new president of baseball operations, Chaim Bloom. So let's see what went down. So Matt, take us through the offseason for the Cardinals.
Yeah, so I'll start with who's gone, who's not here anymore. We have Brendan Donovan, again, kind of a utility guy. Starting pitcher Sonny Gray, Wilson Contreras, Nolan Arenado, and then Miles Michaelis. Um, so some pretty big names, at least in terms of like guys that we're used to seeing on this Cardinals roster. As far as people who are new here, I'm gonna be totally frank with you guys. I don't recognize many of these names. It feels like a lot of potentially prospects and stuff, but I'll just dive in and hope I say them right. We got pitcher Richard Fitz, Brandon Clark, Hunter Dobbins, Yoiker Fajardo, Blake Aida, um, Jack Martinez, Dustin May, and Ryan or Rin Stanek. Um, so I mean, just a bunch of pitchers, nobody to replace any of that infield. So, ooh, an interesting offseason. I mean, if you're going to commit one way or the other, I guess commit hard.
Yeah, yeah, no question. I think this is part of the deal now, right? Like it's on. The rebuild is on, and it's starting right now, whether you like it or not. And these are the guys who are going to get it kickstarted. So, these are the players who are going to be around for this little intervening period. And some of them are prospects, and some of them, are going to be hopefully contributors, in the future. But let's talk about those couple of Red Sox trades. So, let's talk about what the Cardinals got in some of the players they got from Drew's Red Sox, and because there were a couple different trades that went down between those two teams.
Yeah, I mean they got a bunch of pitching. That's what they got. That's kind of been, I guess, the move. I'm not familiar enough with like what the Cardinals' organizational depth was before these moves, but seems to me that they wanted some pitching help. And it's interesting because Heim Bloom is the guy running the show over there in St. Louis. He was running the show in Boston for a few years there, and he struggled to develop pitching. It's kind of been a thing the Red Sox historically have not been super good at until Craig Breslow came in. That has been his calling card, is pitching development, and it shows right away. Heim Bloom made two pretty significant trades with the Red Sox with the Sonny Gray move and the Wilson Contreras move, and yet none of the players he got were guys that were there from his moves. Like he didn't draft any of these guys when he was with the Red Sox. He didn't trade for any of them when he was with the Red Sox. These were all Craig Breslow guys, and they were all pitching. Um, so I think Richard Fitz and Hunter Dobbins both have shots to, they'll be on the major league team some this year. I don't think either of them have a super high ceiling, but I think their floor is solid major league starting pitcher, like back end starting pitcher, maybe even like a decent bullpen role. I think Brandon Clark, they hope, is kind of the prize from these trades. He was one of the more higher ranked Red Sox pitching prospects, but again, Red Sox kind of had a lot of these guys, and if he's the one they were willing to give up, like I don't know exactly what that says. Um, and then I'm not super familiar with the lower level prospects like Yoiker Fajardo and Blake Aida. There are people more knowledgeable about farm system stuff that could talk about that, but either way, I think this was just about a youth movement. It was time to move on from what the Cardinals had been, because they were pretty mediocre ever since that 2022 when Goldschmidt and Arenado both went off, and they had Pujols for that, like, last dance kind of run.
Hmm.
They were super fun that year and then fell apart in the playoffs, and we haven't really seen them be the same since. So I'm looking at their major league roster in total, like starters, relievers, uh, bench, starting lineup. There are three guys over the age of 30 that are like projected to be on their roster. So this is going to be maybe a tough year. I don't love their pitching. Like Dustin May, who we've seen be nothing but terrible the last couple of years. Or that's not true. He's been terrible and then also hurt.
Hmm.
Um, he's slotted as their number two starting pitcher right now. So like I don't love it. I think this is kind of on purpose. I think Heim Bloom, what he is good at is building up a farm system, and they're still in the early stages of this. But basically, a fully homegrown major league team outside of a couple guys, um, which good for them. I just don't know if it's going to be that exciting.
Yeah, and as I kind of said, like if you're gonna commit one of two ways and commit to it hard. I think the worst thing you could do to a fan base that's used to a certain way of life is to keep them average or just below average for years and years and years. Like, dude, if you think that you're gonna start this rebuild and you want to just break it down and go back to the roots and like build it up from the bottom up, yeah, trade away all these big contracts and bloated contracts, get as many prospects as you can, and just start it over. Like this is his chance to build a team from the ground up, and I gotta respect it. I can't lie. I gotta respect it because I think a lot of teams love to be average, and he's kind of showing he doesn't want to be average. He wants to be good, but he just wants to start over with fresh books.
Hmm. Yep, that's the goal here. And if that was the goal, they accomplished it with flying colors. This is why, like, I sort of didn't want to do like off-season grades or something. Like we didn't do any of that just because like if you're grading, you'd have to grade everybody on, kind of what their goals were and how they accomplished them, and that's not really fun to do it that way because you don't get too many like of the spectrum that way, like the too far into the spectrum, you don't get to give out any Fs. Like this one would be like if you were in a vacuum, this would be an F off season. Like you lost everybody and you didn't get anybody back, and stuff like. But it's not like that because that's not what they were going for. They're not trying to do much this year. It's all with the next couple years in mind, and so that rebuild era, it's officially here. Their up and coming town is closer than some other teams have had when they tore down in recent past. The Cardinals farm system rates as one of the best in the sport already, and they were successful in flipping their veteran assets for future contributors. And so it may be a long season for Cardinals fans, but in St. Louis, there's always the Rams, right? So you can follow them. So go ahead and check them out. But let's go now to the last place team from last year. Pittsburgh Pirates are up next and round out our NL Central preview. In 2025, the Pirates continued their trudge through a messy rebuild that never really began in earnest. This is a mix of some of the sport's most intriguing young talent and some of its most washed veterans. The roster did pretty much exactly how most people thought they might and finished last place in the division. So what's next for the Buccos? So let's go to their offseason. I believe, Drew, you are up here on giving us the recap for the Pirates.
Yeah, so the talk around the Pirates for basically since they drafted Paul Skeens has been how are they going to build around Paul Skeens? He has blossomed into, if not the best, the second best pitcher in Major League Baseball over the last couple of years. Um, Dominant ace starting pitcher. He's their guy, but they had nothing around him, so they tried to remedy that a little bit. So pretty big offseason as far as Pittsburgh Pirates like history is concerned. You're not going to see any of these names as like top tier free agents or anything like that, but you'll know some of these names. You got first baseman, but he's probably going to play mostly left field for them, Ryan O'Hearn. You got Brandon Lau for second base, Jake Mangum for the outfield. You got Mason Montgomery in the bullpen, Marcelo Zuna will be DHing. Yost Nixon Garcia, we'll see him get some at bats in the outfield this year, I'm sure. You got Gregory Soto to kind of round out the bullpen, and Jose Urquidy will be the number 5 starter at least to start the year. And they lost some guys. They lost Mike Burrows, who figures to be a big piece of the Astros starting rotation now. Andrew McCutchen, as of today, I think officially signed with the Texas Rangers on a minor league deal. So his second Pirate stint is now over. Tommy Pham, Colin Holderman, and Johan Oviedo has been traded to the Boston Red Sox. He figures to play a big role there.
Yeah. So, for the Pirates, let's start here. You asked that question, how do you build around Paul Skeens? And, they're trying to help their lineup this season take a little bit of a step forward. They're bringing in guys who can make meaningful contributions and meaningful improvements over last year's lineup here. So, do you see that working in their favor? Do you like the moves they made to try to improve the lineup here and try to give it a little bit more consistency throughout?
Yeah, I think you grade them on a curve, similar to how you were talking about. Like it's hard to, necessarily judge a Cardinals offseason because obviously it's not very good, but you got to put it into perspective. The Pirates, like you could get mad and be like, well, why didn't you, outbid the Phillies by $20 million so he would sign there for, Kyle Schwarber or Pete Alonso? Why didn't you outbid the Orioles by, $10 million? Whatever it is, like you can't realistically expect the Pirates to do that. Like if they had signed either of these guys to the exact deals that they ended up getting, I would give them props for that. But being the Pirates, you would have to overpay by a lot to get someone to sign there, is kind of my thinking. Someone of that tier, anyways. And so yeah, I don't mind any of these bigger moves they made. I like Brandon Lau. If he can stay on the field, he is going to be one of the best offensive second basemen. His defense is sketchy, and that's going to be a theme on this team. They kind of went all upside on offense. So you got Ryan O'Hearn. I'd really feel more comfortable with him as your first baseman, but he's going to play a lot of outfield for them this year. Marcelo Zuna, we'll see. He had a down year last year. We've seen him have down years before and then pop off. So maybe they find something else in the tank there. Um, these are, these are moves of a team that is trying to improve, even if it's not going to raise the ceiling to, the same extent that a Kyle Schwarber would or that a Pete Alonso would. I think these are decent moves for a team in this position. My bigger concern is that their big strength is their pitching, and it should remain pitching with Paul Skeens, of course, at the top. Mitch Keller's a decent arm. Bubba Chandler, I expect big things from him. But like trading Oviedo and trading Burrows, like that was five guys that could, you know, give you good starts. So like granted, I think they can fill it in. Like Urquidy will make good starts for them. Maybe Jared Jones comes back in the second half of the year and their rotation can really fly. But I think it almost feels like they forgot to keep keep track of the pitching to some degree in order to take care of this lineup. And I don't think the lineup did that many favors to the pitching staff because I think this is going to be a really sloppy defensive team. I don't think they figured to be one of the better defensive teams in this league.
Yeah, I think it's, the difference between looking at this offseason for them in a vacuum versus looking at it within context, kind of like what we're saying. It's like I think that this is an improved team. Granted, to improve upon what they were isn't like a high bar to clear, and there are still some pretty clear, visible gaps and holes in this roster. But overall, like I think that they are a better team. And last year, people didn't really care about those fourth and fifth games for the Pirates. They cared about losing the games where Paul Skeens went 8 innings, gave up no runs, and still took a loss. Like those are the games that I think people were like the most upset about and the fans were most upset about. And so I think improving the lineup like this is a way to at least avoid that type of a scenario. And it also allows, I think, I mean, we all know the potential that O'Neil Cruz has as a player. And he was just surrounded by nobody. All the pressure felt like it was on him to be this offense. And now he doesn't necessarily have as much pressure. I mean, they've got a legitimate top four, in their lineup here that they can kind of mess around with. And I think they can do some things there. And taking some pressure off of O'Neil Cruz, who, like you said, I think is going to be a main contributor to that sloppy defense out in center field. He does not look comfortable out there. But at the end of the day, if you're just thinking about the bats, this could improve him as well. So, you know, the Pirates are probably not going to be very good, but at the same time, they're probably going to be a little bit better than they were.
And I think a big part of them being better, we haven't even mentioned yet, is Connor Griffin, who is not
Sure.
currently listed as their opening day shortstop, but I think he's very much in the conversation to win that job out of camp. And even if he doesn't, we'll see him pretty soon. This guy is not even 20 years old yet. He is just hitting tanks. He's a beast. How tall is he? Can I even find that out right now? Very quickly, probably not. But he's he looks like superhuman. I think the newest rankings, he's the
Six
number one
four.
prospect. Yeah, 6'4".
Whoa.
Newest rankings, he's the top prospect in baseball. I think he could really lift the ceiling of this team this year, and I think they are counting on him. That's kind of a double-edged sword because, like, on one side, yeah, hell yeah, I'd love to see a young guy come up and be like a star, and I think he's capable for sure. At the other side of the sword is, you know, that's a lot of pressure to put on a young kid to come up and be that guy right away and be the guy for this team. I'm hoping that these additions like Brandon Lau and like Brian O'Hearn will take some pressure off these guys and can lift the floor of the offense so that all Connor Griffin and O'Neal Cruz have to worry about is lifting the ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's no question that the Pirates lineup, right, should take a meaningful offensive step forward as a result of the moves they made. There's some added power here, some consistency throughout the lineup, and it's possible that if everyone plays to their potential, this Pirates team looks a lot different than last year's squad behind the elite starting pitching they have at the top of their rotation. So to avoid a last place finish, all they have to do is outpace the Cardinals, who all but threw in the towel on 2026 already. So the Pirates have to be able to do that, you would think. So let's see what you think, though, if they are capable or not, because right now what we're going to do is give our division predictions. So 2026 final standings for this division. Let's go top to bottom, and let's start with Drew. So who do you got top to bottom here?
Yeah, I feel a little bit squeamish about the top. I can't lie to you. Everything in my brain is telling me to pick the Cubs, and everything like just based on what like my life like muscle memory basically is telling me no, 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 pick the Brewers instead. Ultimately, I am going to choose the Cubs to win this division. I think they're a really strong team. I think they're going to have one of the best lineups in baseball. I think they're going to have probably the best defense in baseball overall. Um, and I think their pitching is good enough, and I like some of the arms there. I think this is a really, really good team, and I like the addition of Alex Bregman. I think he's going to lift them up big time. And I have the Brewers finishing second, and I think they're still going to win somewhere in the 90 plus wins range. But like, even though I said all that stuff about you can't ever really like doubt the Brewers, it pisses me off that they traded Freddie Peralta. Like at the end of the day, that's that's some cheap shit, and I think like they could be better with Freddie Peralta on this team, despite the fact that I think they'll still be good without him. Um, I think that's a move I don't agree with. Um, I am going to pick the Pirates to finish third, and that's going to be me choosing to believe in them. I really like Paul Skeens. I love watching him pitch. Who doesn't? I like what I've seen from Connor Griffin. I want to see this Pirates team succeed. I don't know if it's going to be enough to be a playoff team. I think the National League is going to be really competitive again, but I like I decided I'm going to believe in these moves even if they weren't the flashiest. That's kind of what I've decided with the Pirates. And with the Reds, honestly, 2 days ago I probably would have put them third, but if Hunter Green is missing any kind of time, I think that's
Yeah.
a big, big blow to them. And I already talked about the lineup. I don't fully believe in that lineup either. And then I think the Cardinals are going to get last. I think they're the only team not trying to win here, and I think they're going to do exactly that, not win. So I think it's going to be a long year for Cardinals fans, but maybe there's some hope in a rebuilt team, but it's going to take a couple years.
Yeah. I mean, similarly, but I think I just fell on the other edge of the sword at the top here. I'm not gonna bet against the Brewers. I said it at the top. I'm just not gonna do it. So I'm gonna put the Brewers first. I just know somehow, some way, they are going to end up winning 90 something games, which people forget is really hard to do. Even for a good team, it can be hard to win 90 games. So I'm going Brewers first. I do have the Cubs finishing in second. I think that they have the potential to be really good. There's a piece of it that worries me, and that is, we've seen the high highs of what Pete Crow Armstrong can be. We've also seen some pretty low lows there, and I wonder, did we see a very streaky team all happening at the same time? Is it going to be inconsistent? I don't know. I feel like there could be some positive regression for some players. I don't know. The Cubs are interesting me. They could absolutely finish first. They absolutely could not though. So I have them finishing second. I have Cincinnati in third. I think I'm a little higher on this lineup than potentially you are, Drew. Well, not potentially, certainly than you are, Drew. I think that they're exciting. I think that they play the kind of boomer bust game that that field already wants them to play. And so I think, I could see it happening. Pittsburgh, as much as I like the moves they made, I still just don't think it's enough to be like a legitimately, consistently competitive team. I think it's on the way, and I think, barring something like them bringing up Connor Griffin and him being immediately amazing, that could definitely change this. But I also understand that when, 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds come up, usually it's not to superstardom instantly. There's usually some growing pains there. So I don't know. I have them finishing fourth, and then yeah, Cardinals last. I think that they're doing this intentionally, and I think that's okay. As long as they have a plan to not stay there.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as the plan is solid, Cardinals fans in a couple years, hopefully you can just think of it all as a funny memory of what I'm sure will befall you this year. But okay, great. So that is our NL Central preview episode for the upcoming season. Got one more in the books here, so it feels great to be talking about these teams in sort of the anticipatory way that we're talking about them. It's right around the corner. The start of the season. So as we continue to knock down some of these divisions, keep listening. You can watch here on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, thank you very much. You can subscribe on YouTube. Even if you don't watch on YouTube, you can hop over from Spotify where you're listening and hit that subscribe button. That'd be cool. And you can like this video, share it around, hit us in the comments about what you think the NL Central will look like from your perspective. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see, follow us on Instagram and TikTok if you like. And until next time we, talk to you, take care, and we'll talk to you then. Goodbye.
Bye.